There we go. Howdy, everybody. Welcome in those watching live. If you're catching this sucker on replay, hello to you as well. This is effectively a live taping of Fantasy NBA Today, the Friday weekend edition. I'll try to do a couple of things. I realize this banner needs to be adjusted. It's still not quite where I'd want it to be. I don't know why that one's leaning so far back. Maybe they're losing their turgidity. Not as turgid as they used to be. Bring that music down. It's, I don't know, fun. Makes you feel like you're part of the show. So here's what I want to do. Anybody that's watching live right now, I'll let you guys know that this part is not going to be on the recorded podcast. I'm going to do like an official start in a minute or two here. But I want to let everybody know on the video side that if you have any questions, you can throw them in the chat room. I'll probably do a little rapid fire Q&A at the very end of the show for YouTube viewers only. So kind of a little bonus in that direction. Also, obviously, if you like what you've done here, please do click the like button at the bottom. That's extremely helpful for us. The more likes that we can roll up on each individual show, the more places it ends up sort of getting found. And then subscribe to our YouTube page because we're doing way more things like this. Live tapings of this show. I've done a few of those this week. We had a breaking news show on Chris Paul's return. We'll try to do more of those. Weekly lineup shows, waiver wire shows, all kinds of good stuff that we really have. I hope that you guys agree. We've really taken, I think, pretty big strides on the YouTube side. And now kind of the next phase for us is, for me in particular, improving my computing setup here because I actually bought a green screen and I tried to set it up. It actually would have been hanging over this dumb banner in the background. And my computer can't handle it. The whole thing was just glitching out like crazy. So you're stuck with me in front of this dumb banner for now. But, you know, it cuts the mustard. If you guys remember when we used to do these shows way, way back before it was a popular thing to do, you know, hipster style like that, you guys just saw my bed in the background. There were teams in Aaron Brewski's high stakes leagues called Dan Besbris's Unmade Bed. It wasn't made. Why the hell would we make a bed? You're going to get right back in it. Nobody's seeing the room, he thought, while firing up a live YouTube video. Anyway, yeah, please do hit the like button, subscribe. Keep throwing those questions in. I see a few of you have already done so. And I'm assuming that for those watching on replay, if you want to throw a question, I'm going to put a link in the chat room right now. And I'm hoping that that'll actually come up on the replay. If it doesn't, I'll say it out loud as well. The link is sportsethos.com/community. And if you want to do /NBA, that will take you to the NBA page. You can also just click it from the first part of that. Sportsethos.com/community is our forum over at Sports Ethos. So if you have some questions after the show, if you're watching on replay, you can throw it over there. I read every single forum post. I'm like the last line of defense. We have a couple of mods, but I still go through every single one of them. So if you have a question that doesn't get answered, I'll probably get it over there. Way better than Twitter for answering questions. Certainly better than YouTube. But again, that's the Twitter deal over there as well. So I think that's the logistical stuff here at the front end. I'm not going to play the song again for you, but I am going to count this thing down, and then we're going to do the official start of the show. So sit back, relax, and here we go. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, a Sports Ethos presentation. I am your host, Dan Besbris. You can follow me on Twitter at Dan Besbris. If you can spell it, you can find it, as the old adage goes. I used to spell it with like the military call letters. I don't know if that was helping anybody. It's Dan. That's the easy part. And then Besbris is Bravo Echo Sierra, Bravo Romeo India Sierra. I didn't learn any of the other ones. I just learned those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different letters. And so now I'm able to do that on a podcast, and I sound extremely knowledgeable. I know. Load of crap. But you can find me on Twitter at Dan Besbris. I hope you will do so. because we do so much on social media. And thank you to the person that in the chat room already called me the Twitter goat. I'm doing my best. That's what it all comes down to, because and I'll take this second here just to address everybody. First of all, thank you to all of you. I know many of you are throwing likes and retweets on stuff. That's actually a really big deal. Even if it's just one thing every couple of days, it adds up, and then it drops into other people's feeds, and we can keep growing. I can grow my own Twitter. I can grow Ethos Fantasy BK's Twitter, which, again, that's Ethos Fantasy, then BK like basketball. And that's all great for Sports Ethos because it's more people coming in. I realize it's also hard for me to ask you to like tell other people in your league about this podcast or about Sports Ethos, because then you feel like you lose your edge. It's a terrible business model, what we have going on here. So if you are hesitant to do so, this is another way to kind of spread the word, telling people in other leagues about Sports Ethos and me, Dan Besbris, Fantasy NBA Today. And that's how that goes. It's a Friday show, so you guys know what that means. We're going to be going through ads and drops and holds and watch lists. It's a big watch list this week, actually. A lot of guys are sort of like hovering right in the balance. A couple of buys, a couple of sells. And then we got this mega streamer board. I haven't been able to do that on Twitter the last couple of days. I've just been way too busy, and too many players are actually kind of coming off of the streamer board, oddly enough. It finally shrunk down from like 21 to more like 12 or 13. So there was quite a few shakeups on the streamer side. But we'll go through that stuff piece by piece. And obviously, I'll throw some promos, squeeze some promos into the mix there. But let's dive right on in. Start at the top. Ads. That's what everybody wants to see. And my first ad, I want to go through the guys that are sort of like the second call on the ad names. And I tried to cut and paste this into a chat room for people that are watching this show, and it did not go very well at all. But the ads on this list, the second call guys are Malik Monk and Tim Hardaway Jr. And I like to start with the second calls because I don't feel like I need to spend a ton of time explaining myself on those guys, because I did it last week. And I don't think I should have to explain myself on most of those dudes, because Hardaway in particular has been just lava hot of late. He's pushed his number up on the season up to 155, which is crazy because he wasn't even in the ballpark of fantasy value prior to basically the last 2 weeks. And then over that stretch, he's been insane. He's hitting every damn three-pointer in the universe, and he's a top 70 player over his last 7 games, almost 5 three-pointers a game over that stretch. If you just eliminate that 7th game, if you just go last 5 or 6, it's been even more impressive, top 25 kind of guy. He's not going to shoot that well in perpetuity. He's not going to hit 6 three-pointers a game on 56% from the field, but he is settling in nicely with that starting unit. And then as far as Malik Monk goes, we've been looking for consistency out of him. It fluctuates, admittedly. Last week, he's outside the top 130 because he really hasn't done anything besides score. But if you extend that to 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it actually gets better for him because you got a few steals, you got a few assists. The upside is not colossal with Monk because he's going to be a little lower on the depth chart, and he's more of a scorer first. Free throws are useful for him. Field goal percent is going to be iffy. Assists and steals is where he's able to kind of elevate his numbers, and those come and go. So he's not as pressing, but I do feel like he has kind of a rest of season appeal to him, and that's why these guys end up in the ads department. Other ads, let's get to the first timers. Walker Kessler, who's coming off one big ball game, but frankly, that's all I really needed to see because we'd been talking about him as more of a watch list guy for a few weeks. It's kind of like, oh, he's like getting very close. What do we do with this information as we press up against? Anyway, he got a start. That's the short version. He got bumped into the starting lineup. Did it have to do with Lauri Markkanen being out? It's quite conceivable, actually. And if when Markkanen comes back, which could be as soon as this evening, does Kessler go back to the bench? Maybe. But he has one of those fantasy stat sets where you don't want to be late to the proceedings, if you guys catch my drift. Like, if he pops, you don't want to wait until it's 2-3 games in to make the ad, because at that point, you're too late. It's much better with a player like Kessler, who, if he gets not even starters minutes, but like 22 to 25 minutes a ball game. If he gets that much, and I got to decrease the light here on my face. It is absolutely stunningly bright. If he pops, if he gets 23, 24 minutes, that's enough for almost a double-double and probably 2 blocks per game. That type of stuff doesn't grow on trees. So you just, I mean, the thought process here, at least on my end, as you guys sort of watch me work through it in my head while speaking about it, is in a worst case scenario, you drop him. But there are a lot of scenarios where his minutes maybe improve every time he's out there and he plays a decent ball game. I don't know. I feel like you're convinced. Can I move on? I can move on. Bones Hyland is an ad, but he's more of an ad on the head-to-head side than the roto side because of the inconsistency element. When he's cooking, he's cooking. But overall in the year, he's outside the top 160 because a lot of really bad games have been blended in with the better ones. He's not a roto games cap friendly type of player because if you drop him in there on the day where he has 5 minutes against New Orleans, you've exploded a games cap. If you drop him in there on the game where Denver gets involved in a blowout or Jamal Murray's in foul trouble or something like that, and he gets 30 minutes and scores 20 points, congratulations. But the problem with Bones is that right now it's averaging out to sub 12 team value on, and so for a games cap side, it's not enough. Head to head, if you roll him out there in a decent scheduling situation, then it's beautiful. Like, you know, they've played every other day for like the last 10 days in a row. That's actually a pretty good schedule in the modern NBA. After tomorrow, Bones, they host Utah Saturday. Then they're off for 3 days. So to me, at that point, he's probably not even a head-to-head guy anymore. But, you know, you could grab him at the tail end of that. Then they go back to kind of a every other day proposition. Bogdan Bogdanovic is on the ads list. And, you know, he probably would have been on the watch list. Probably said that word one too many times. But DeJounte Murray got his ankle tweaked when RJ Barrett invaded his landing space. And so now the Hawks are going to have kind of no choice but to give Bogdan, frankly, more than he can handle right now. He's only 57% rostered, so he is floating around in some leagues. He's worth an ad. I know his last ball game was not an impressive one. He's going to have a good deal of rust as he gets himself ramped up to all this stuff. But the good news is, dude took 16 shots in the game where he laid an egg. 16 shots is way more than enough, and he will get a lot of them with John Collins and DeAndre Hunter and DeJounte Murray all either out or doubtful or questionable. The road is wide open. He doesn't even need to play 30 minutes to get enough usage to get to fantasy value. So Bogdan's an ad. Perhaps he turns out to be an elevated streamer. It's a possibility that as the Hawks get fully healthy, Bogdan slides back out of the equation. But that could be a week. That could be 2 weeks. That's more than enough time to call him an ad for now, more than a streamer to say ad and see how it goes. Ad doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to hang on to someone the rest of the year. It just means that there's a chance I might hang on to them for the rest of the year in a way that with streamers, not really. You know something is going to break it up, barring a catastrophic injury that turns their stream into a longer-term deal. Jeremiah Robinson-Earl. This might actually have been a second call for him as well. I can't remember if last Friday he was on the ads board or if he was like the watch list almost ads board for us. But he's an ad, and he's an ad despite the fact that his last few games have been relatively quiet. And I'll tell you why. Because his last few games have been averaging 28 minutes. He's only 15% rostered, which is nuts for a center playing starters minutes. Yes, he's number 142 on the season, but a lot of that was actually tied up in him having super low minutes the first month of the year. Last 2 to 3 weeks, his minutes have trended up into the high 20s, and over that stretch, by the way, despite the fact that his blocks have been extraordinarily low, and he's not a big shot blocking guy, but he's a center, and he'll typically kind of fall into one every now and again. Over the last 2 weeks, he's in that 120 range. Field goal percent could be better. Rebounds could be better. Steals and blocks could be better. He profiles as a late round center, but those guys ended up being kind of hard to find this year, which it's kind of funny because like coming into draft season, when we were running a bunch of mocks, it seemed like there were a bunch of centers that were going late that had an opportunity where, the thought process was at least one of those guys would pan out. And the guys that I'm thinking of, like as I dump a few names out on the board, were and it did, a few of them did pan out, but they're different ilk. Let me see if I can explain myself. So the centers that were going late that were getting scooped up on my board, you guys remember from the Dan Vesper Old Man Squad, Brook Lopez, Kelly Olynyk have been the two that really panned out in a big way. Isaiah Jackson was the one that did not. But of those three guys, the only one that was really slated to get a bunch of rebounds and field goal percent was Jackson. Brook Lopez, blocks and threes out of the center spot. Olynyk, sort of an across-the-board kind of deal. Steals, some blocks, some threes, some assists. But neither one of them was a field goal percent rebound guy. Those centers, the late drafted centers that were supposed to help you in field goal percent and rebounding, none of them panned out. So Ijax didn't pan out. Hartenstein didn't pan out, at least not for now. And, things can change with those guys. If you want to go a little bit earlier, Jalen Smith hasn't been panning out. Although he was never going to be a huge field goal percent guy, he was going to be more of the rebounding side. The late big men that worked, and, we're fortunate that we did get a lot of Brook Lopez and Kelly Olynyk, so that's been great. Don't get me wrong, those guys have been arguably two of the most fun picks in fantasy basketball this year. But the rebounds and field goal percent targets we had late in drafts, and all analysts really, just didn't happen. You can look at draft results from pretty much every draft you've been in. Basically, none of those guys. All the rebounds. Here's an even easier way to do it. Sort your board by the best rebounding players in the NBA, and you got to go way down to get to a player that has legitimate fantasy value that wasn't drafted either in the early or middle rounds. Like Bobby Portis, who was going in the 80s, is maybe the best example of like a semi-late big man who has been a pretty good field goal percent rebound guy. Ivica Zubac, who's going around 100, is a decent example of one. But there hasn't been that one that really exploded. Zubac is number 82. Portis is number 94 in 9-cat. These are guys that are not blowing the roof off the building. Yes, and Portis isn't getting you field goal percent anyway. Zubac, I guess, is kind of the only example. Then you got to work your way down the board to find the next good rebounding big man who's also good at field goal percent that wasn't taken kind of early. And honestly, I'm having trouble finding it. Jared Vanderbilt, who's number 105, is sort of blended in there. Mitchell Robinson, but he was taken in the typically more like the 80s. There just wasn't that like post 100 guy like Brook Lopez, who was drafted at like 140, or Olynyk at 140. Those guys didn't pan out. The guys that were drafted super late that did pan out were the guards. The guards have been the ones that panned out, the late draft picks. The Mike Conley, who's due to come back tonight, is a decent example of that. Or Kyle Lowry, who was going relatively late this year. You can, it's pretty easy actually to sort by assists in your league, and you can find some guards that went pretty late that are actually like doing relatively well in the assist department. Or just like general guard statistics. Lowry, number 59. Conley doing relatively well. So all of that tangential, Dan fluttering his brain off in the distance, as if to say, we need to be proactive with big men who can rebound or help field goal percent. A la Walker Kessler, sort of Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who's more rebounds than field goal, but whatever. And it's why the next name on this list is back on there again, and that's Larry Nance Jr., who I don't want to say that I recommended a drop. I think he was more of a like light hold on a recent one. But we finally got to see New Orleans play their first competitive basketball game in God knows how long. I remember earlier this week we did a segment on the last time Larry Nance played in a competitive basketball game was November 18th when the Pelicans lost to the Celtics by 8 points, and he played 27 minutes in that one. And then the next one, blowout, 18 minutes. Next one, blowout, 17 minutes. Next one, blowout, loss, 15 minutes. Next one, November 28th at Oklahoma City, or versus Oklahoma City, Nance didn't play in that game, and sure enough, it was competitive. And then he sat out an 18-point game, an 18-point game, a 15-point game, and didn't sit these out. He was getting 20 minutes. And then whammo, Pelicans played the Pistons, of all teams, in a 6-point game, and Nance played 29 minutes. Now the Pels have 2 in a row against Phoenix, and then 2 in a row against Utah, and then another one against Phoenix. This profiles as possibly 5 consecutive competitive ball games. So Nance is in a great posture right now. He might see minutes in all 5 of those. It's a little weird how many non-competitive games the Pelicans have been involved in, but it also seems like the kind of thing that will level out over time. So that's why I like it. Who have I not covered on this list so far? Keegan Murray, he had a good ball game yesterday. I put him back in the ads board because, I don't know, for some reason I got dubbed as pro Keegan Murray, which, as you all know, longtime listeners of the show, I'm very anti-rookie in general. God help me, I don't know why this light is so bright today. I am very anti-rookie in general, but when they start performing poorly at the beginning of the year, I actually become pro-rookie because they get dropped, because they become available for a ridiculously cheap price. So these guys that are getting drafted at 80, 85, whatever, someone's blowing a 7th round pick on Keegan Murray, they throw him on the waiver wire, or you can get him for like a decent waiver wire scrub or a super hot long streamer. And then I become pro rookie, like Jabari Smith Jr., who's starting to turn it around. And Murray, you're seeing more signs of him starting to turn it around. So yeah, I think you add him. I think you ride this thing out. And I think the nice part is that if you added Keegan Murray now, 7.5, 8 weeks into the season, you didn't have to deal with 2 months of him sucking. You can enjoy the benefits of what happens to every rookie, which is they get popped in the mouth, you pick them up after that, and then you roll. Ta-da! It's fantastic. And the same bleeping thing happens every year because I can guarantee you in late September, the rookies are going to move up the board and a bunch of analysts are going to tell you this is the time. And it's going to be the same thing again. Don't get caught up in it. Let them go. You might miss out on one. There's usually one rookie every year that manages to figure it out quickly. But odds are there are going to be 4 to 8 of them that figure it out later, and you can take advantage. Andrew Nembhard is the only name on this list I don't believe that I've covered. I did them out of order for some unknown reasons. I don't know why I did that. I wrote them in a different order than I talked about them. I like Nembhard. He's got a well-rounded fantasy game. No, obviously he's not going to be the same guy when Halliburton is in the lineup, but we've seen enough, I think, from him to call him an ad. And, he actually had a 10-assist game when Halliburton was in there. He passes well. He defends well. The steals are solid. The three-pointers are solid. He actually rebounds really well from the guard position. Since his minutes have trended up into the 30s, his rebounds are 4, 6, 8, and 6. I don't know. There's not a lot to not like about him. He has a non-rookie type of fantasy game. Maybe he's the one. There is only one. And he wasn't even drafted. Maybe Nembhard is the answer to which rookie figures it out a little quicker. The one that's not being asked to do quite as much. Go figure. Wanted to tell you guys here, and just, a brief stoppage in the action to remind you guys of our partnership with Manscaped.com. They're great. This is their 3rd consecutive year sponsoring us here at Fantasy NBA Today. The promo code is Ethos20. You can get 20% off and free shipping on your order, whatever it might be. Get something small like the luxury nail kit, which, this thing is so sweet. By the way, it's magnetized. Snaps in, holds closed. I've got it on my desk. I have it there the whole time. I don't just do that before podcasts. It's there because every once in a while, you got to deal with the old fingernails. They've got the Lawnmower 3.0. They've got boxers. They've got shampoos and conditioners now. They've got gels. They've got shaving cream. They've got a travel bag. They've got an ear and nose hair trimmer. They've got an actual straight razor, which is really nice. I did that on like this lower neck and cheek area. Probably why this desk light is reflecting off of my face like a solar flare today. I'm going to continue to mess with it until I can fix it here and I can do this show without squinting the whole way through. Manscaped.com, promo code Ethos20. Strong recommend on the Lawnmower 3.0. That thing is sweet. That's way over that away, out of screen, so I can't go get it here while I'm doing the pod. But definitely check them out, and I'm forever grateful. I actually paused the recording for the recorded side because for those of you watching on video, the number has been slowly increasing here. So I want to remind everybody to please take a moment to click the like button. If you're watching live, if you're watching on replay, whatever, like the video, subscribe to our YouTube page. I know it's annoying to have somebody stop what they're talking about and hit you with this, but please do it for me, do it for us here at Sports Ethos. That's the only way we're going to grow, is with your collective help. And, these shows can continue to be free forever. So please do assist before we dive back into the drops and the holds here in a matter of a few seconds. There was something else I was thinking about throwing up into the chat room. Oh, I remember what I was going to mention. To those of you that are joining now later on the live stream, throw questions in the YouTube chat. I am going to try to do a rapid fire Q&A at the end of the pod recording and see if I can get 20, 25 of those in or something super duper fast, 3-4 of them every minute. But that'll be a special bonus for those of you that are hanging out and watching live with us here. I know I didn't give much warning. I just put a tweet up saying that I was going live, and then I went live. So thank you to those of you that are hanging out with us. In fact, I'm actually going to bump my own tweet right now, which I know this is bad TV, but whatever, screw it. You're in it to win it at this point. Okay, let's dive back on in. All right, next thing on the docket, the drops. And this is the drops are always a pretty easy one. I don't need a ton of explanation on the drops. I'm going to try to, once again, type them out to the best of my ability. I don't know if that's going to work in the middle of a show, but that'll be for folks that are watching the live show. Hey, that did work a little bit better. The drops are Austin Reeves, who, if you watch him, that's all you need to know. He looks less confident. Something happened maybe before that Milwaukee game where I don't know if he got a ball poked away. It's amazing how so much can happen in a basketball player's head and the impact it has on what they're doing on the floor. And there's a different speed to what he's doing, or to any of them, when they lose a little bit of that confidence. It could come back, and he still got a couple of and ones in that Cleveland game, but there's just something sort of clicked back down for him, and he's going to need a couple, a good game, or a game where he doesn't feel like things are kind of going against him. Maybe it's a couple 3-pointers going in or whatever. Then we can reconsider. But for now, he's a drop. Alexei Pokusevski is a drop. He hasn't been getting minutes now for a couple of weeks. I'll admit 3 weeks ago, I thought that this was the time that they were going to finally unleash him. Nope. Marvin Bagley became Marvin Bagley again. And I don't mean to be a jerk about the Marvin Bagley thing, because I actually have nothing against him specifically. I have something against numbers when they're trying to lie to me. So my beef was actually with numbers attempting to lie to me. And then sure enough, he's had 3 pretty bad games in a row after a few good ones. And, just leveled off. That's it. Life finds a way, kind of thing. And that's the power of averages. So you can punt. I mean, especially in the games cap side, you can't possibly trust to drop him into your lineup. If you're head-to-head, you can roll with him when the schedule is right. And then Colin Sexton, who got hurt, which, timing-wise, what are you going to do? Mike Conley's coming back anyway. Sexton was about to lose most of his value. So the timing worked out relatively well on that front. Only 2 holds, so I'm not going to type those names in the chat room, and they are Lonnie Walker, who I think, much like Reeves, has lost a step. And I don't know if it's confidence, or with him, we did hear that he was playing through a little bit of a foot thing. So it's possible that it's kind of a day-to-day injury-related type of issue, in which case maybe we end up picking him back up. Perhaps he becomes more of a streamer type. But right now, I think maybe you could even downgrade him to streamer level. And then Royce O'Neal is the hold. Wait a minute. I've jumped ahead. Oh, Lonnie Walker's we're in the holds department. I've lost track of what I'm talking about here. So Lonnie, I think you probably hang on to a little bit longer, but I actually don't have that big of an issue if you wanted to drop him. Royce O'Neal is the firm hold that I want to put on your board. There's this weird anti-Royce sentiment in the fantasy space, and I don't know where it originated, but I do know that it is spreading, and I think it has something to do with the fact that he's another dude who doesn't score, and right now, he happens to be in a pretty bad shooting slump. But that's the thing about guys that are ranked between 60 and 100. They're not going to be super consistent. They're not. And for Royce O'Neal, he had a game back on November the 23rd where he hit 5 3-pointers. I think he went 5 for 8 shooting in that ball game. 4 boards, 7 assists, 4 steals. Since then, he's shot 38, 40, 29, 22, 44, 17, and 17%. I want you to try to throw that part out as you're assessing what he's been on the year. Over the last 2 weeks, Royce O'Neal is outside the top 175. That's bad. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat that part. But try to see why. Sample size. He's playing 38 minutes a game over those last 2 weeks. And he's shooting 29%. He has 6 rebounds, 4.5 assists, a steal, and 0.6 blocks over that stretch. Those numbers are pretty well in line with what he's done for the season to this point. In fact, the rebounds are even a little bit higher over the last 2 weeks. The only real difference for Royce is that on the season, he's shooting 38%, which, mind you, that's including the 2 weeks where he shot 29%. So he was actually more like around 39 or 40 prior to this slump. So that means the points were higher, the 3-pointers were higher, and the field goal percent was higher. And he's number 86 on those numbers. What if you went back and you just looked at the first 5 to 6 weeks of the season, meaning eliminate the most recent shooting slump and try to remember what he was before that happened? So basically go to like November 25th from the start of the year. What was Royce O'Neal then? He was number 72. 10 points, 5 boards, 4.5 assists, 2.5 3-pointers instead of 1.5, shooting just over 40% instead of 29%. This is a guy who, when he's shooting his normal rate, is a top 75 9-cat player. And don't start with it's because of turnovers. He's actually just under 2 turnovers per game, which is basically league average. So he's doing it with the better than average boards for a wing, the much better than average assists for a wing, good steals, decent blocks, good 3-pointers. That's a lot of good. Are you guys seeing where I'm going with this stuff? I even had somebody tweet at me that they dropped him and they felt great about it. Well, I don't understand. Like, if someone who, when his field goal percent levels off, is a top 75 guy, I don't know what kind of league you're in, but you can't be dropping a dude like that. His role hasn't changed. He's still taking like 6 to 8 shots per ball game. He's just been missing them. We don't need him to take 10 shots a night. In fact, he didn't really, like, there was a time when Kyrie was out, I think he took like 9-ish, 9.5 shots per ball game. And yeah, he was more like a top 55, 60 guy at that stretch. But we only need the top 75 Royce. Don't drop Royce O'Neal. And if somebody does, scoop him up very fast. Because the only thing that's changed with this dude is that he's in his shooting slump. And that levels off. Always. Law of large numbers. Just wait it out. Next on the board is the watch list, and there are a number of names on this one, and that's going to make it impossible for me to type it out, so I'm just going to do it kind of the ugly way and see if that works in a pinch. But for you guys listening, watch list player number 1 is Nick Batum. He's actually played relatively well over the last little bit. He's not well enough to add. Plus, we've seen, especially from last year, after he plays better for a few days and has a few extra minutes, he does tend to get hurt. So they're going to have to dial his minutes back down. My expectation is that we're not going to have to do anything with Batum, but we might as well watch just to see how it plays out. Tari Eason, who's going to be on the watch list almost perpetually, he's close. I mean, like, you know what? Screw it. Make him an ad at this point. I don't care. He's like 125 to 140 range pretty much every week throughout the entire season. The minutes haven't really been there. They're a little bit better over the last 1 to 2 weeks. If he gets his minutes into the 22 or higher range, he probably does end up making it to the top 100 area. And he has a really nice fantasy game. He rebounds well. He gets steals. He hits some three-pointers. His field goal percent has actually not been that bad for a young player. Not good, mind you, but not like tank your team bad. He's around 44%. Makes his free throws. That's relevant and good. I think he got picked up like 3 weeks ago in a lot of leagues, which, mind you, was way early, and folks are sitting on him. And I think a lot of the time, I do have a fear that this is just going to be what happens throughout the year, where sometimes it's 17 minutes, sometimes it's 21. This is like what everybody was dealing with Alperen Şengün last year. And we're just going to keep hoping that Eric Gordon gets moved. If he does, Eason becomes extraordinarily valuable very quickly. But Eric Gordon's been on the trading block for 3.5 seasons. Maybe it happens this year. If it does, it's probably going to be around the trade deadline. I think you can probably add Eason, but he's still only 37% rostered, which is not super high. He hasn't been a 12-teamer, but for 4 or 5 day stretches, kind of blended in with a lot of top 140, 150 range stuff. So it's close. I'll certainly give you that. And like 3 weeks ago, remember I was saying folks are way too early on this. Well, now you're not way too early anymore. You're probably just a tiny bit too early. But we're at a point where if you wanted to do it on the head-to-head side, you just ride with it because he's not really hurting you anywhere. On the Roto Games Cap side, you could pick him up and you probably just wouldn't start him for now. He becomes a luxury stash. Who else is on the watch list here? I can go back and see it on my screen. Charles Bassey is a watch list guy on the chance that he jumps over Zach Collins, or if Collins ends up hurt. Remember, he got knocked to the floor and kind of whacked his head. It sounds like Collins is okay. So those two guys are going to continue to split minutes, and that hasn't really been enough for Bassey consistently, but he's damn close. As is Quentin Grimes, who finally had his first 12-team relevant line. If he does it again, I might pick him up. That's the short version on that one. Daniel Gafford, he's been close. I still think he's really more of a guy you make the play on. It's like the safe play is if Kristaps Porzingis has to miss a game, which you got to figure is going to happen at some point here. But, Gafford, if the schedule is good, you could throw him in more head-to-head side. Again, Roto Games Cap, I don't know that I'd have the stones to drop him into a lineup right now. And similarly for Monte Morris, I kind of want to see what he does in the next one without Bradley Beal, because he finally had a game where he did stuff. And that's so rare for Morris, who's much more of the lag back, make good passes, good assist to turnover ratio kind of dude, but very rarely gets aggressive. He got kind of aggressive in their last ball game. I don't expect that to continue long term, but maybe in a little burst here with Beal out. If he does it again, I'll probably add him and see how it goes. Alex Caruso is on my watch list right now. He's moved into the starting lineup. He still really needs one high usage guy to get out of the way. But as a steals specialist, there he kind of makes sense. And that's why he's watch list and not really a stream or even an ad. Deploy as needed. Saddiq Bey is on my watch list. We talked about him a little bit on yesterday's show, as I'm kind of down on Pistons fantasy values as a whole anyway. Bey needs a lot of shots to get there. And lately he's gotten just barely enough. So watch list. Jalen Duren overtook some of the other centers in the Pistons last ball game. If that continues, he becomes an immediate add. So just keep an eye on him day to day, night to night. And he's another one, like with Walker Kessler, who, Duren's not quite built the same, a little more of the traditional rim runner type, where Kessler's just a giant dude. But it's that same thing where you want to kind of be ahead of the curve with a guy like that. And then Kyle Anderson and Jalen Noel, I lumped together into one because in the last game, Slow-Mo got the start, but his minutes were squeezed a bit, and Noel actually ended up doing more. So could this flip back and forth? Would that end up being extremely annoying for fantasy users? Yeah, it would be very annoying. And so I don't know that either of them is a guy you need to start in a games cap format. You could probably play both of them in a head-to-head, if the Wolves have a back-to-back coming up or something like that, or even just in kind of a standard streaming sense. I'm really more thinking of who you could use a games cap on. And for both of them right now, I'm pretty iffy. The buy list is very short. Keldon Johnson and Terry Rozier, they're showing signs of breaking out of their slumps. I don't have the proper pairing for them, but we'll try to take care of some of that over on the social media side. Again, that's at Dan Besbris on Twitter. Show's not over yet. I just wanted to remind you guys of the Twitter handle, at DANBESBRIS. We'll try to figure out what it would cost you to make a trade for Keldon Johnson or Terry Rozier right now, because you're not going to get full discount price, but I think you'll probably get discounted more than where they were drafted. And how much, that's where we'll kind of have to figure out if it's enough. Is the discount enough, I should say. On the sell list, and it might be too late, Anthony Simons, Jeremy Grant, we put him on the sell list last week before Dame made his return, but after seeing the box score yesterday, I think everybody kind of saw why Simons and Grant were on the sell board. Because we remember what they did the week when Dame was healthy at the beginning of the season, and it was not nearly enough. Now, they'll still be fantasy relevant, but Simons as a top 30 guy, that's not going to happen when Dame is around. And Jeremy Grant is a top 50 guy. That's not going to happen when Dame is around. He just takes too many touches away from those guys. There's enough for them to be 12-team startable left, but not enough for them to be anywhere near where they were before. So we'll try to work through that on Twitter as well. The buys and sells are a lot easier to do when you can get data from a large chunk of people, so we can run some polls. We can try to figure out really what it would take to make a trade involving any of our buys and sells on that list. And the streamer board, which, oh boy, it's really long. I'm not going to go through them individually with a big explanation. So I'm just going to list the players and who they're replacing. And if we have questions on that, we can kind of take it over the forums as well. The streamer board. Caleb Martin was a good stream with Kyle Lowry out. DeAnthony Melton, good stream with Tyrese Maxey out. Torrey Craig with Cam Johnson out. John Conchar, kind of a chill stream. Kind of like Torrey Craig. Those guys are sort of chill streams. That's Desmond Bane being out. Colin Sexton being down. I think Malik Beasley probably stays in the mix. Michael Porter Jr. out means Bruce Brown. Brandon Ingram out. Trey Murphy's been a terrific streamer the entire year. I think there were like 4 games where the Pels were fully healthy. Trey was not particularly great in those 4 games, but he's had a wide open avenue the rest of the way. Ingram, Zion, Herb, CJ. I mean, someone's been out on that team. What have they played? 25 games or something like that? I feel like 21 of them, Trey Murphy's probably started. Mo Wagner for Wendell Carter Jr. right now. He's starting in front of Mo Bamba, but we'll have to kind of keep tabs on that. Killian Hayes starting for Cade. That's been a longer one. This got stretched into a couple of posts here. Zach Collins currently for Pirtle, but as we talked about, Bassie is creeping up on him, so that one could kind of bounce either way. AJ Griffin, I wasn't super high on him after we saw that last ball game, but now with almost the entire Hawks starting lineup hurt, you almost have to. I think Anthony Davis is back, but if he happens to miss another game, Thomas Bryant is the stream there. Jalen McDaniels has been playing better again for Charlotte with Gordon Hayward out. Denny Avdia. I like that stream with Bradley Beal out. Avdia looks really good. Every time Beal's gone down now, he's been pretty consistently solid. And then Al Horford being down with COVID, Grant Williams is the guy that steps up into that bucket. And that is your full mega list of a week in review. But we do have one more lightning round task upon us, and that is a look at the upcoming weekend. We're going to look at every single ball game very fast and just try to remind you guys what we're watching for, if it wasn't something that we already talked about during our list of players from before. So starting with tonight, Rick, Grimes, Charlotte, McDaniels, more of a streamer type, Washington. I want to see if anybody besides Avdia can slide up into that streamer bucket, and what's going on with Daniel Gafford, who we already talked about. Andrew Nembhard in Indiana is the guy to watch. Let's see what happens if anybody comes back for the Pacers. Toronto, nothing. Orlando, Wagner's, multiple Wagners, but really Mo is the one that we're watching in the front court, and Markelle Fultz, who's coming off a pretty big dud. For the Lakers, not a whole lot. Philly, not a whole lot either. Sacramento, Malik Monk, Keegan Murray are the guys you're keeping an eye on there. Cleveland, not much now that Jared Allen's back. Atlanta, Bogdan Bogdanovic, AJ Griffin, Jalen Johnson, all of those guys, and sort of how they fit with so many pieces down for the moment. Brooklyn, Like, honestly, if this is the game where Royce O'Neal hits 5 out of 8 shots and you guys all re-add him, fine. Just remember who told you not to drop him in the first place. Detroit. We talked a bunch about Detroit already, but you're keeping tabs on Killian Hayes. You're keeping tabs on Jalen Duren. Everything going on in the front court there has been a little bit of a mess. Memphis, nothing really. Phoenix, Chris Paul's second game back. What do his minutes look like more than anything else? Pelicans, not a whole lot, although it's possible we might see other players down and out. I think Herb is still hurt, and Alvarado got hurt in their last ball game. Does that open anything up for someone like a Dyson Daniels? Maybe, but I'm not going to get out in front of it. I'd rather just run with the Trey Murphy mega stream there. Minnesota, we already talked about the Noel and slow-mo situation. Utah, Conley back, Sexton out, Markkanen questionable. What's Walker Kessler going to do? What's Malik Beasley going to do? There's actually a lot to pay attention to with the Jazz. Milwaukee, nothing. Dallas, nothing really. I mean, I think we're pretty good on Tim Hardaway at this point. Flipping to Saturday, the Spurs, Keldon Johnson, 2 games in a row. He hasn't shot the ball all that poorly. Hey. The center spot, while Poeltl continues to be out. We'll keep tabs on that. They've upgraded Poeltl's injury to it was like a heel strain or something now, I think. So it sounds a little bit worse, but we'll see. Maybe he'll be back in the not too distant future. Miami, I think this should be a full health game for them, so probably nothing really to keep tabs on there. Brooklyn, Indiana, we talked about. Clippers, Kawhi should be back for this one. Washington, we talked about. Oklahoma City, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, somebody to watch, but not much else there. Cleveland, Dallas, Chicago. I think we can keep tabs on Caruso, who we just talked about as a watch list guy. Boston, some streamers here with Horford down, but not much else there. Warriors, I think they expect to have Steph and Draymond back for this game on Saturday. But if Wiggins is still out, does someone step into that role? Is it Jordan Poole, or does something else happen? Denver, nothing really there beyond the typical stream stuff. I guess you can keep tabs on Bones. And Portland is the last one on Saturday, but really not much going on there other than the kind of buy low, sell high stuff. And I think everybody plays either Friday or Saturday this week, interestingly, except the Rockets. And with them, we're just continuing to wait for Eric Gordon to decide he wants to take like 2 weeks off. And then everything will get delightful because Eason will be good and KJ Martin will be good. And in the meantime, a lot of Rockets are fighting to try to get near the top 90. And right now, I think Alperen Sengun is the only one who's just barely inside that mark. So that's your lightning round weekend in preview. We will also, of course, loop back around on Monday with a reverse chronological lightning round to recap everything that happened over that stretch. A few things here towards the end of the recorded pod. Don't worry, for those watching on the video form, we'll have some little post-show goofiness going on. But I do want to remind everybody, if you want to join us here at Sports Ethos, we are continuing to recruit for baseball, for basketball, for hockey, for football, full season fantasy, or DFS. You can reach out to me on Twitter at Dan Besbris or email roster@sportsethos.com is the email address. Roster@sportsethos.com if you want to email in and apply to be a part of our Sports Ethos team. Also, if you want to cover a team, not in the fantasy sense, you can also hit me up for that or email in for that as well. To those listening on the recorded side, please do continue to throw those 5-star reviews on the podcast. They made a really big deal to us. That's a huge piece of the puzzle. It's not the same story if you're watching on any of our shows on YouTube. Subscribe and click the like button on anything. All of that, every single one of those little things you guys do to help us grow, it makes an impact. 1 new person finds it. 2 new people find it. They start hitting like. Snowball effect. Big deal. We love you for it. Thank you once again this week to manscaped.com. Promo code there, Ethos20 for 20% off and free shipping on your order. Thank you to expressv.com/hoopball for their continued partnership. That's an extra 3 months on a 1-year subscription. And thank you to thrivefantasy.com. The promo code there is Ethos. They'll get you a full deposit match bonus. Thanks for listening, everybody, on the recorded pod. Another week in the books of Fantasy NBA today. Again, we'll hit you up on Monday with a reverse chronological lightning round. If you have any questions about anything we're doing, again, take that over to the forums at sportsethos.com. I will get you guys on social media. We got a lot left to do today over there. Adieu for now. And to those watching live, I already told you a little bit at the end here, lightning round question and answer segment. Takes his last swig of water, and let's start clicking through some of these posts. Yeah, it's a fun song, isn't it? Maybe I'll throw it in the background here while I'm doing the lightning round. Why not? There we go. Yeah, that's good stuff right there. Sweet jam. Shout out to Slick Rock. Torrey Craig, yeah, he'll be inside the cut line on 12 teamers, even if it's just barely. He's a yes. Trade for Killian Hayes. It obviously depends on what you're giving up. I think Killian Hayes profiles as more like a top 110 kind of guy long term. I know he's having a top 50 week, but it does tend to even out with him a little bit. I think he'll be useful for 12 teamers. So, again, depends on what you're giving up, but I am like lightly pro Killian. Let's go Kessler over Gafford for the back-to-back. Shoot the moon. Screw it. Let's go nuts. Bigger upside there. Unless KP sits out one of the games, in which case then I reserve the right to say, oopsies. It's a good question, and we did talk about Duran. I think he's still kind of kicking along on the watch list because we haven't really seen him log the minutes every game. It's like 1 and then 2 games where he's a little lower and then 1 a little higher. I need it to be more like 2 out of every 3. That's where I start to do it. So, like, if I see it 2 in a row, I might add him and say, all right, like I need 2 out of 3. So if he biffs the next one, give another one after that. Just want to make it 2 out of every 3. So every time he has 1 low game, you need to have good ones on either side of that at least, and then, pockets. Shake Milton, you can probably drop on this question. With Harden back, his role has shrunk considerably. He's coming off the bench now. He's not going to have that same orchestration job. I like Nembhard as someone to hang on to. Slow-mo is 50-50 for me at the moment. This is the post I was referring to earlier. Thank you, dude. I try to do a lot on Twitter, and sometimes it works. Blake, you're too kind. You're also full of duty, my good man. Kessler is indeed a per-minute guy. I think this is when I was talking about drafting rookies. I wasn't speaking to any one of you directly, but it is a lot, actually, of the fantasy community that forgets what they're doing. Of course, I've got a phone call coming in from my wife, so I better wrap this thing up pretty quick. What do we got here? Lots of rebounds this week. Caleb Martin, Kyle Anderson. Yeah, I think you could swap out Alvarado because he's not going to help you much in rebounds or blocks. And you could probably swap out Caleb Martin too. The Heat are probably going to be healthy the rest of the week. I prefer Alvarado over Davion Mitchell in a vacuum, but if Jose's hurt, then obviously you go the other way. Yeah, a little bit. Nembhard is a little bit of that Sacramento Halliburton. He's not going to pass as much because Halliburton in Sacramento still got like a decent number of touches. And Nembhard's not going to do as much offensively because guys like Buddy Hield are going to take shots there, and Miles is going to take shots. He's just a little bit farther down the picking order than Halliburton was in Sacramento, but it's not a bad comparison because he does do a lot of stuff. He's nowhere near as good as Halliburton is. So let's also try to make that part clear. Houston assists and free throw percent. Kevin Porter Jr. is a weird one because his name value is better than his actual real life value. He is actually a pretty good assist guy for you. But he's not a good free throw shooter. And then with Mitch Rob, he doesn't do either of those things. He doesn't pass or assist. I think Mitchell Robinson would be an easier player to trade than Kevin Porter because he's been better lately than KPJ, but I might be mistaken because, I also value things a little bit differently. Like Kevin Porter's free throw and field goal percent, I want nothing to do with, but you might find someone in your league that's punting one or both of those things, and he becomes a really attractive player to you. On the Mitchell Robinson front, he had a couple slow games when he came back, but he's been more like a 75-80 range guy the last week and a half now. So you could look for, maybe like a Mike Conley, honestly. If you want assist and free throw percent, I think would be a pretty interesting target that probably fits that pairing. I don't think you'd have to do two. You probably won't find a team that wants both KPJ and Mitch Rob and will give you one better player back. I think your best case scenario here is just to do like Robinson for Conley, or see if maybe you can trade KPJ for Conley or something like that. And then you get out from under the bad percentages on the Kevin Porter thing. Yeah, you lose scoring there, but 9-cat, it does end up helping you. This was a suggestion to go for Chris Paul. You're going to do way more than KPJ and Mitrov. This is actually a Brooklyn Dodgers hat, but it's also could be a Bakersfield Dodgers hat, where I worked for a very long time. Some of you guys might know that. Jalen Brunson, yeah, again, I think that's too high. I think we're shooting the moon a little bit there. Is Markelle Fultz a hold? Yes, absolutely. It's time to pull Kawhi out of IR for 12-team-point value. But yeah, absolutely. Pull him out. He played 30 minutes in his last ball game. That's more than enough. You are welcome. Thanks to everybody watching live. Again, like and subscribe. Please, I beg of you. If you're watching on replay, like and subscribe. And if you have questions, throw them over in the forums. But I've said that a few times already. I'm going to go find out what my wife needed. Magic of live shows, I suppose. Have a great day, everybody. I'll talk to you guys after the weekend. I think Sunday we should have another live YouTube show. That should be Ethan and Eric on the Waiver Wire program. So that should be a really good one that you guys can check in on later. Later, everybody.